Hi, 4th and 5th graders. Today we are going to finish reading Matilda. We are on to our last chapter, so it is actually only one chapter that you need to listen to. It's going to be a short day today, but as we get closer to the end of the school year, I'm trying to make stuff a little bit easier, and really, next week's going to be pretty easy on you, and then the week of school in June is going to be super easy on you. So we're trying to kind of wind down, and it's just been a weird end of the school year. Next year will be better. For the handful of you that I won't see next year, it'll still be better because she'll be at the middle school. And then for the 4th graders, you're stuck with me another year. Most of you. Now, where we had left off, Matilda had practiced with this cigar in her bedroom to get it to move. And then we found out that her reasoning behind that was that she was going to write on the chalkboard, so like the whiteboard, but with chalk. And she needed to be able to lift the chalk piece. And the chalk pieces that most classrooms use aren't the like big ones that you use on your driveway. If you've seen them, which some of you might have, they're like a pencil. Let me grab a pencil real quick. Kind of like the size of a pencil, maybe a little bit bigger and shorter, so about that size. That is what her plan was to do. And we know that she had kind of probed and asked Miss Honey, what were the names that you called Miss Trunchbull? And it was Agatha. What was the name that they called you, which was Jenny? And what was your dad's name? And it was Magnus. And we found out her reason behind that is because she, in a way, pretended to be a ghost. She used her mind, her eyes with the little hands reaching out, to write on the chalkboard, Agatha, give my Jenny back her house, give back her wages, and you need to leave. And Miss Trunchbull was like, what's going on? And she fainted. And once she fainted, the kids, they all ran up there, and Nigel, being brave as he is, took the pitcher of water and dumped it on the Trunchbull, which did not wake her up. So they called in 5 teachers and the nurse, and the teachers were like, good job, Nigel. Way to really dump that water on her. Can we get more? So you can tell from that, and we had talked about in the last video, that even the teachers did not like the Trunchbull. And we knew Miss Honey didn't because one of her past with her growing up, but also too how she treated her in her classroom and her students. She picked kids up by the ears, the hair. She threw them around. She was not nice to kids. And I can guarantee that each and every one of you would not like it if I went up to you and grabbed your hair and pulled you around. I would not still have my job if I did that. So that's kind of what happened. And we have one chapter left, and it's going to kind of finish up the entire book, and we're going to find out what happens with Matilda. Because she still has some stuff going on in her life that isn't so great, and we're going to learn a little bit more about Miss Honey, too, in this chapter. And this chapter is called A New Home. Before I read, I want you to make a prediction to yourself. You can maybe tell it to yourself, say it out loud, tell a parent, a sibling, your dog. I'm sure my dog is annoyed with me constantly. He's sleeping over there, but he'd probably like it if I was quiet. What do you think this chapter is going to be about? It's called A New Home. A new home for who? What's going to happen with that? How is this new home going to come about, and why? Why do you think that? So make that prediction in your brain, tell it to someone, shout it out to yourself. I don't know. Let's find out. Later that day, the news began to spread that the headmistress had recovered from her fainting fit, and had then marched out of the school building tight-lipped and white in the face. The next morning, she did not turn up at school. At lunchtime, Mr. Trilby, the deputy head, telephoned her house to inquire if she was feeling unwell. There was no answer of the phone. When school was over, Mr. Trilby decided to investigate further, so he walked to the house where Miss Trunchbull lived on the edge of the village. The lovely, small, red-brick Georgian building, known as the Red House, tucked away in the woods behind the hills. He rang the doorbell. No answer. He knocked loudly. No answer. He called out, "Is anybody at home?" No answer. He tried the door and, to his surprise, found it unlocked, and he went in. The house was silent, and there was no one in it, and yet all the furniture was still in place. Mr. Trilby went upstairs to the main bedroom. Here, also, everything seemed to be normal until he started opening drawers and looking into cupboards. There were no clothes or underclothes or shoes anywhere. They had all gone. She'd done a bunk, Mr. Trilby said to himself, and he went away to inform the school governors that the headmistress had apparently vanished. So she just up and left. On the second morning, Miss Honey received by registered post a letter from a firm of local solicitors informing her that the last will and testament of her late father, Dr. Honey, had suddenly and mysteriously turned up. This document revealed that ever since her father's death, Miss Honey had, in fact, been the rightful owner of the property on the edge of the village known as the Red House, which, until recently, had been occupied by a Miss Agatha Trunchbull. The will also showed that her father's lifetime savings, which fortunately were still safely in the bank, had also been left to her. The solicitor's letter added that if Miss Honey would kindly call into the office as soon as possible, then the property and the money could be transferred into her name very quickly. Miss Honey did just that, and within a couple of weeks she had moved into the Red House, the very place in which she had been brought up, and where luckily all the family furniture and pictures were still found. From then on, Matilda was a welcome visitor to the Red House every single evening after school, and a very close friendship began to develop between the teacher and the small child. So Miss Trunchbull just up and disappeared. I'm guessing, and I'm sure that you are all as well, she got spooked. She got scared because the ghost of Magnus had told her to go. So she up and left, and then mysteriously, the will, which is, we had talked about before, that's what someone creates. It says, if I die, this person gets this, if this person gets this. Usually it's like a house, their money, cars, anything that they own, really. And so Dr. Honey, Miss Honey's dad, his will had never been found previously. And the speculation that Miss Honey and Matilda had was that Miss Trunchbull knew where it was and she was keeping it hidden because she wanted the house for herself. And the will did not say that. So it shows up, and the best guess would be that Miss Trunchbull finally handed it over. She finally was like, I don't want to deal with this ghost. Here's the will. She didn't want it to follow her anymore. Really, we know there was no ghost, but she does not know that. So Miss Honey quickly jumps on that. She's like, I'm definitely going to move into this house. I'm going to get the money that was owed to me because, like I said, when someone makes a will, a lot of times it's their money. So whatever money that I have up is going to go to this person when I die. And so the money was supposed to go to Miss Honey. So she has all this money now and a house. So she's going to be living a little differently. And the one visitor she keeps having is Matilda. Back at school, great changes were also taking place. As soon as it became clear that Miss Trunchbull had completely disappeared from the scene, the excellent Mr. Trilby was appointed head teacher in her place. And very soon after that, Matilda was moved up into the top form, where Miss Plimsoll quickly discovered that this amazing child was every bit as bright as Miss Honey had said. One evening, a few weeks later, Matilda was having tea with Miss Honey in the kitchen of the Red House after school, as they always did, when Matilda said, suddenly, "Something strange has happened to me, Miss Honey." "Tell me about it," Miss Honey said. "This morning," Matilda said, "just for fun, I tried to push something over with my eyes, and I couldn't do it. Nothing moved. I didn't even feel the hotness building up behind my eyeballs. The power had gone. I think I've lost it completely." Miss Honey carefully buttered a slice of brown bread and put a little strawberry jam on it. "I've been expecting something like that to happen," she said. "You have? Why?" Matilda asked. "Well," Miss Honey said, "it's only a guess, but here's what I think. While you were in my class, you had nothing to do, nothing to make you struggle. Your fairly enormous brain was going crazy with frustration. It was bubbling and boiling away like mad inside your head. There was a tremendous energy bottled up in there with nowhere to go. And somehow or other, you were able to shoot that energy out through your eyes and make objects move. But now things are different. You are in the top form, competing against children who are twice your age, and all that mental energy is being used up in class. Your brain is for the first time having to struggle and strive to keep really busy. which is great. That's only a theory, mind you, and it's maybe a silly one, but I don't think it's far off from the mark. So Matilda had tried to move something with her eyes again, and she said I couldn't. Miss Honey's guess on why that is that Matilda's finally being challenged. Instead of being in kindergarten where she was above and beyond what was expected, she could do everything that they could do and more. She got bumped up to a lot higher. Kids double her age. So if she's 5, she's now with 10-year-olds. So imagine a kindergartner being in a 5th grade class or a 6th grade class. And now she's getting that challenge. So, I mean, it's pretty hard to imagine that a kindergarten could be successful with 5th or 6th graders, but that is what was going on. I'm glad it's happened, Matilda said. I wouldn't want to go through life as a miracle worker. You've done enough, Miss Honey said. I can still hardly believe you made all this happen for me. Matilda, who was perched on a tall stool at the kitchen table, ate her bread and jam slowly. She did so love these afternoons with Miss Honey. She felt completely comfortable in her presence, and the two of them talked to each other more or less as equals. Did you know, Matilda said suddenly, that the heart of a mouse beats at a rate of 650 times a minute? I did not, Miss Honey said, smiling. How absolutely fascinating. Where did you read that? In a book in the library, Matilda said, and that means it goes so fast that you can't even hear the separate beats. It just sounds like a buzz. It must, Miss Honey said. How fast do you think a hedgehog's heart beats? Matilda asked. Tell me, Miss Honey said, smiling again. It's not as fast as a mouse, Matilda said. It's 300 times a minute. But even so, you wouldn't have thought it went as fast as that in a creature that moves so slowly, would you, Miss Honey? I certainly wouldn't, Miss Honey said. Tell me one more. A horse, Matilda said. That's really slow. It's only 40 times a minute. This child, Miss Honey told herself, seems to be interested in everything. When one is with her, it is impossible to be bored. I love it. So, looking at Matilda and Miss Honey, when they're around each other, they talk to each other and respect each other's thoughts. When Matilda talks, Miss Honey listens and is a part of that conversation, which must feel really good for Matilda when she doesn't get that anywhere else necessarily in her life. The two of them stayed sitting and talking in the kitchen for an hour or so longer, and then at about 6 o'clock, Matilda said good night and set out to walk home to her parents' house, which was about an 8-minute journey away. When she arrived to her own gate, she saw a large black Mercedes motor car parked outside. She didn't take too much notice of that. There were often strange cars parked outside of her father's place, but when she entered the house, she was confronted by a scene of utter chaos. Her mother and father were both in the hall, frantically stuffing clothing and various objects into suitcases. Before we move on, there is Miss Honey and Matilda, and now Matilda's back at her house, and her parents are really quickly packing. What on earth's going on? She cried. What's happening, Daddy? We're off, Mr. Wormwood said, not looking up. We're leaving for the airport in half an hour, so you'd better get packed. Your brother's upstairs, all ready to go. Get a move on, girl. Get going. Off, cried Matilda. Where to? Spain, the father said. It's a better climate than this lousy country. Spain, cried Matilda. I don't want to go to Spain. I love it here. I love my school. So here are her parents frantically packing. Matilda comes in shocked, like, what is going on? And find out her parents are moving to Spain, which is a country in Europe. So that's a long way to move. I wonder why. Just do as you're told and stop arguing, the father snapped. I've got enough troubles without messing about with you. But Daddy, Matilda began. Shut up, the father shouted. We're leaving in 30 minutes. I'm not missing that plane. But how long for, Daddy? Cried Matilda. When are we coming back? We aren't, the father said. Now beat it. I'm busy. Matilda turned away from him and walked out through the open front door. As soon as she was on the road, she began to run. She headed straight back towards Miss Honey's house, and she reached in less than 4 minutes. She flew up the drive, and suddenly she saw Miss Honey in the front garden, standing in the middle of a bed of roses, doing something with a pair of clippers. Miss Honey had heard the sound of Matilda's feet racing over the gravel, and now she straightened up and turned and stepped out of the rose bed as a child came running up. My, she said, what in the world is the matter? Matilda stood before her, panting out of breath, her small face flushed red all over. They're leaving, she cried. They've all gone mad, and they're filling their suitcases, and they're leaving for Spain in about 30 minutes. Who is? Miss Honey asked quietly. Mommy and Daddy and my brother, Mike, and they say I've got to go with them. You mean for a holiday? Which is like a vacation. Miss Honey asked. Forever, Matilda cried. Daddy said we're never coming back. There was a brief silence. Then Miss Honey said, Actually, I'm not very surprised. You mean you knew they were going? Cried Matilda. Why didn't you tell me? No, darling, Miss Honey said. I did not know they were going, but the news still doesn't surprise me. Why? Matilda cried. Please tell me. She was still out of breath from the running and from the shock of it all. Because your father, Miss Honey said, is in with a bunch of crooks. Everyone in the village knows that. My guess is that he is a receiver of stolen cars from all over the country. He's in it deep. So he could possibly go to jail. So that's why he's trying to flee. He's trying to run before he gets caught by the cops, basically. Matilda stared at her open mouth. Miss Honey went on. People brought stolen cars to your father's shop where he changed the number of plates and resprayed the bodies a different color and all the rest. And now somebody's probably tipped him off to the police and they are on him and he's doing what they all do, running off to Spain where they can't get him. They'll have been sending his money out there for years, all ready and waiting for him to arrive. They were standing on the lawn in front of a lovely red brick house and its weathered old red tiles and its tall chimneys, and Miss Honey had still the pair of garden clippers in one hand. It was a warm golden evening, and a blackbird was singing somewhere nearby. I don't want to go with them, Matilda shouted suddenly. I won't go with them. I'm afraid you must, Miss Honey said. I want to live here with you, Matilda cried out. Please let me live here with you. I only wish you could, Miss Honey said, but I'm afraid it's not possible. You cannot leave your parents just because you want to. They have the right to take you with them. But what if they agreed? Cried Matilda eagerly. What if they said, yes, I can stay with you? Would you let me stay with you then? Miss Honey said softly, yes, that would be heaven. Well, I think they might, cried Matilda. I honestly think they might. They don't actually care about me. Not so fast, Miss Honey said. So there's Matilda frantically talking to Miss Honey. We've got to go fast, Matilda cried. They're leaving any moment. Come on, she shouted, grasping Miss Honey's hand. Please come with me and ask them. But we'll have to hurry. We'll have to run. The next moment, the two of them were running down the drive together, and then out onto the road, and Matilda was ahead, pulling Miss Honey after her by the wrist. And it was a wild and wonderful dash they made along the country lane and through the village to the house where Matilda's parents lived. The black Mercedes was still outside, and now its trunk, and all the doors were open, and Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood and the brother were scurrying around it like ants, piling in the suitcases. As Matilda and Miss Honey came dashing up, Daddy, Mummy, Matilda burst, gasping for breath. I don't want to go with you. I want to stay here and live with Miss Honey. And she says that I can, but only if you give me permission. Please say yes. Go on, Daddy. Say yes, yes. Say yes, Mummy. There they are running. And then there is the scene with the car, and they're quickly rushing. You can see, especially with the father here, he's like running with those suitcases, trying to get them in, and they're all packed up by the boot, which is the trunk. It's just a different way of saying it. The father turned and looked at Miss Honey. You're that teacher woman who once came here to see me, aren't you? He said. Then he went back to stowing the suitcases in his car. His wife said to him, this one will have to go on the back seat. There's no more room in the trunk. I would love to have Matilda, Miss Honey said. I would look after her with loving care, Mr. Wormwood, and I would pay for everything. She wouldn't cost you a penny. But it was not my idea. It was Matilda's. And I will not agree to take her without your full and willing consent. Come on, Harry, the mother said, pushing a suitcase in the back seat. Why don't we let her go if that's what she wants? There'll be one less to look after. I'm in a hurry, the father said. I've got a plane to catch. If she wants to stay, let her stay. It's fine with me. Matilda leapt into Miss Honey's arms and hugged her. Then Miss Honey hugged her back. And then the mother and father and brother were inside the car, and the car was pulling away with the tires screaming. The brother gave a wave through the rear window, but the other two didn't even look back. Miss Honey was still hugging the tiny girl in her arms, and neither of them said a word as they stood there watching the big black car tearing around the corner at the end of the road and disappearing forever into the distance. There is Miss Honey holding Matilda. And that is the end of Matilda. So, the chapter was called A New House. And there's actually 2 people who got that new house. Miss Honey was able to move back into the house that she grew up in. And then Matilda is no longer stuck with her horrible, wretched parents. She is now living with Miss Honey. So it was a happy ending. Not for Mr. and Mrs. Wormwood. They are running off to Spain trying to get away from the police. But that actually allowed Matilda to get away from that situation. We know they didn't love her. We can tell by the fact that they drive off into the distance and don't look back. We can tell because they leave their daughter behind. I know that my mom and dad would never leave me behind. And some parents would. And that's just how it is. But luckily there's people like Miss Honey in the world who would take in those kids. And that is a marvelous thing because now Matilda can have this happy life with someone who truly cares and loves for her. Loves her. And for her, I guess. That was a weird sentence, though. That is the end of the book. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you did or did not. You have one more comprehension page to do. Then, depending on time, there is a Matilda test that you got sent. There's also a couple other Matilda sheets that you got sent. We will not be doing those. And then I'm working with Mrs. Sibbald about the movie. I've had some 5th graders ask, they're reading a different book, ask for the movie for their book, and I'm trying to figure out a way that we could do that. So if you're interested in the movie, let me know. If you're not, you don't have to watch it. It's a great movie, though. I mean, honestly, it's probably one of my favorites. So that's that. That's the end of the book. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.